Okay. Well, I welcome you back. This is episode 24. Today we're going to find Paul in Caesarea before the governor Felix. Now, Felix would have taken over from Pontius Pilate when he left. So basically, the Romans, they had King Agrippa, and then his son Agrippa uh, took over. But there was the way the Roman Empire was laid out. They had these different divisions of the country, and each division had a king over it, and then each of the areas had governors that kind of oversaw those areas. And so Agrippa was over all of Judea, Samaria, that whole area. But Jerusalem itself, Israel would have had um Felix would have been the governor of that area, and so that they kind of stayed in Caesarea. Now, Caesarea, uh, I actually have two um, links that I'm gonna put in the description box below. One is about Felix. His Wikipedia page talks about Felix, the governor. The other is a video about Caesarea, and I think it's 25-30 minutes long, but it is just fantastic. It talks about how the Romans built this city. Basically, there were no port cities in Jerusalem, and so they were looking for a port city, and it became a pathway between Rome and Israel as everything kind of flowed into that port city. But because the Romans built it, they built it to be a military garrison. They had all the military sporting facilities there. They had soldiers. I mean, it was just inundated with Romans, and so Felix lived there. And last week we talked about, Paul had returned from the third journey. He was back in Jerusalem. He purified himself. He went into the temple, and some people there drug him out and started beating him. And the captain of the guard heard about it and come and took him in custody. And then he arranged an appointment where, under the custody of the Roman soldiers, Paul could be taken back to the Sanhedrin uh, to stand before their council. Of course, they wanted to kill him, and the captain of the guard found out Paul was a Roman citizen, and instead of letting him be killed without a Roman trial, he ended up sending him to Caesarea. And so we're there. Caesarea is also a place. In fact, I want to pull this up real quick because we didn't really go through this much. We've been following the book of Acts. Actually, let me pull this timeline of Paul's life up so I can show you where we're at. We are down here with 59 AD, where Paul goes to Caesarea by the Romans. He faces the procurator Felix. He's found not guilty, but remains in custody for 2 years. But we've been kind of going through the book of Acts, and as we've basically been following the life of Paul. So we skipped some of the stuff early on, but one of the things we skipped was chapter 10. And this is a scene where Peter goes to Caesarea, and there's a young Roman soldier there named Cornelius that the Lord sends Peter uh to share, to witness to him. And so Peter does that. And so I'm not going to read through this whole thing. You can go read Acts chapter 10 yourself if you want, but I'm going to go through a couple of verses here. Verse 1 and 2 of Acts chapter 10 says, "There was a certain man in Caesarea named Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian band." So he was a soldier that came straight from Italy. He was one of the Italian soldiers. He was a devout man, one that feared God with all his house, which gave much alms to the people and prayed to God always. And so this was a man who, being influenced by the Jewish culture and having witnessed and experienced a lot of the things that were going on in Judea at the time, he became a believer. He just believed that there was a God, and he wanted to know the truth. And so God sent Peter to him, and God told him in a vision. And like I say, I'm not going to read all this, but if you go down 25, Paul ends up coming to town. And it says here in verse 25, as Peter was coming in, Cornelius met him and fell down at his feet and worshiped him. And so basically, Cornelius had this vision. The Lord gave him a vision through an angel that Peter was going to come. And so he was waiting for him. And we see down here, verse 37 through 40, we see Peter go ahead and witness to him and tell him. Of course, he talks about the baptism of John and Jesus coming and doing all these good deeds. And it talks about him being crucified when he was slain and hung on a tree. And then God raised him up on the third day and showed him openly before the people. And so he's witnessing to him and telling him the main story that we would tell somebody if we were to witness somebody. Jesus died and rose again from the dead. And so that's what's going on here in verse 33. It said to him, give the prophets witness through his name, whosoever believeth in him shall receiveth remission from sin. And so Peter's telling him, if you want to receive, you can be freed from your sin. And really, this is known in the Bible as the first Gentile conversion. And so I think Acts chapter 10 is amazing. It really wasn't part of Paul's life and up until now, so I didn't go through it back then. But then you see in verse 47, 48, where he's baptized, Peter says, can any man forbid water that these should not be baptized, which have received the Holy Ghost as well as we? And he commanded them to be baptized in the name of the Lord, and then prayed they him to tarry certain days. And so this young Roman soldier, all his household and his friends, if you read through that, you find out that there's a large group of people that come to believe that are Romans, that are Gentiles. And so it was just a fantastic, miraculous time where the gift of salvation was moving, from being centered in Israel to spreading out throughout all of the Gentile nation. This is also the event when they heard about this in Jerusalem. They sent Barnabas up to Antioch to check that church out, and that's when Barnabas went to get Paul from Tarsus and bring him back, which spurred on their missionary journeys. And so this really was the event that started all of that. And so I wanted to share that with you. And I also have a little bit of this video. I'm only going to play a minute or two of this, but I want you to look at, this video. And this is, well, it's 20 minutes long if you want to go look at the whole thing, but we're going to play a couple minutes here. And so we'll just watch.
Caesarea is situated about 65 miles northwest of Jerusalem on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. Until the time of the Roman emperors, Israel had no port suitable for major shipping operations. The Israelite coast remained difficult to access until the time of Caesar Augustus and his local ruler Herod the Great. Although a tyrant and a murderer, Herod the Great was also a master builder.
Herod the Great is one of the most recognizable figures in biblical history, in part because he was such a villain. We know him as the ruler who tried to murder Jesus, but he was a skilled politician, and he is remembered as the greatest builder in the history of Israel. His projects were some of the most spectacular in the ancient world, and that includes the city of Caesarea. Herod built this incredible city primarily because he needed a port on the Mediterranean, and Israel just didn't have any natural harbors. But he also wanted to curry favor with Rome and demonstrate his own greatness. He was successful.
With the full support of Caesar Augustus, Herod took an unknown part of coastline in the middle of Israel and built a major city with a tremendous seaport and all the facilities of a major Roman city. The construction lasted only about 12 years, finishing in about 10 BC. Herod named the city Caesarea in honor of Caesar Augustus. In the year AD 6, Caesarea became the seat of Rome's provincial government in Palestine and the main gateway from Rome to the Middle East.
So that's just a little brief clip of that. If you want to go check that out, I hope you will. There's a lot of good information. It talks a lot about the military, the Roman occupation, the buildup of the Roman population there in Caesarea. And so it's just great information. So what's going to happen today, we're going to go through Acts chapter 24, and we're going to see Paul now comes before Felix. And so Felix is going to hear this case, but the high priest in Jerusalem does not send the people that were involved when Paul was pulled out of the synagogue and beaten. he does not send any witnesses to any of this. Basically, what he does is he appoints a spokesperson to go on behalf of the Sanhedrin Council. And so uh, Felix is going to hear him, the spokesperson, and then he's going to hear Paul. And because there's no legitimate witnesses, Felix can't really find a Roman citizen guilty under those circumstances, but he also doesn't want to release him and there be this uprising or more trouble or anything like that. So what he's going to do is basically just leave him in jail until his time is up. He ends up being replaced by Festus, and so that's who we'll talk about next week, because Festus is gonna hear him too, and then take him to Agrippa to hear, who will also hear him. So there's Paul in that right now is just meeting in front of everybody, captains and governors and kings, and giving testimony. And it's really a good opportunity to spread the gospel, especially to members of the government. And so it's just a fascinating thing. And so we're going to start in 24, and I'm just going to kind of skim through this real quick so you get an idea. It says, excuse me, after 5 days, Ananias the high priest descended with the elders and with a certain orator named Tertullius, who informed the governor against Paul. And so this is what I was saying before. The high priest named this spokesperson, and this person is the one who goes before the governor Felix to give an account. Verse 2 says, when he was called forth to Tertullius began to accuse him, saying, see that by thee we enjoy great quietness, and that very worthy deeds are done unto this nation by thy providence. So he's flattering Felix. We accept it always in all places, most noble Felix, with all thankfulness. And so basically, the Jews hated the Roman occupation, but now they wanted something from the governor. And so he's basically filling his mind full of lies. Verse 4 says, notwithstanding that I be not further tedious unto thee, I pray thee that thou wouldst hear us from thy clemency a few words. We have found this man a pestilent fellow and a mover of sedition among all the Jews throughout the world, and a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes. So they're saying he's been going through not just through Israel, but all over, and he's this ringleader, this sect of Jesus followers of the Jesus of the Nazareth. And so verse 6 says, who also hath gone into the profane the temple, whom we took and would have judged according to our law. So basically we're saying we took him out of the temple, we were beating him, we were going to take care of it, and your people intervened here. Verse 7, the chief captain Lysias came upon us with great violence, took him away out of our hands. And so they didn't get to judge according to their law because that opportunity was stolen from them. I mean, he's whiny. So verse 8 says, commanding his accusers to come to thee by examining whom thyself makest take knowledge of all these things, wherefore we accuse him. And the Jews also assented, saying that these things were so. And so, he's basically making his case that they had it under control and he didn't need to come to Felix. They can release him. And then Paul, after that, the governor beckoned unto him to speak and answer. For as much as I know that thou hast been of many years a judge unto this nation, I do the more cheerfully answer for myself. And so Paul comes to give an account, says, because thou mayest understand that there are yet but 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem for to worship, and they neither found me in the temple disputing with any man, neither raising up people, neither in the synagogues nor in the city. So basically Paul's saying, I was worshiping peacefully. I wasn't disputing with anybody. I wasn't stirring anybody up. And says, neither can they prove the things whereof they now accuse me, but I confess unto thee that after the way which they call heresy, I worship. So worship I the God of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. And now he's going to kind of talk a little bit about his God is their God. They just haven't accepted Jesus as the Messiah. It says, I have hope towards God, which they themselves also allow, that there shall be a resurrection of the dead, both the just and unjust. And this is when he was talking to the Sanhedrin, and he brought up the resurrection of the dead, and it caused this division between the Pharisees and Sadducees. And so they couldn't come to an agreement on what to do with Paul. I mean, that's what started all this anyway. It says, "Herein I do exercise myself. I have always conscious void of offense toward God and toward men. Now, after many years, I come to bring alms to my nation and offerings, and whereupon certain Jews from Asia found me purified in the temple, neither with multitude nor with tumult. We ought to have been there before thee and object if they had aught against me, or else let these same here say if they have found any evil doing in me while I stood before the council." And basically saying, none of these men uh, that were involved with this are here. If they have something against me, let them come to this council. Verse 21 says, "Except it be for one voice that I cried standing among them, touching the resurrection of the dead, I am called into question by you this day." So there's just this one person, this spokesperson has come to speak against him. And when Felix heard these things, having more perfect knowledge of that way, he deferred them and said, "When Lysias the chief captain shall come down, I will know the uttermost of your matter." So he's going to wait because the captain sent him on with a letter. And so now he's going to wait for the captain to come and give an account in person. And he commanded the centurion to keep Paul, and he let him have liberty, and would have and he should forbid none of his acquaintances to minister or to come unto him. So he's not locked away in a jail. I mean, he can kind of come and go, but he is remanded right there, probably to a base, some sort of fort or base or something. But he can kind of move around as he wants and receive visitors. After certain days, Felix came with his wife Drusilla, which was a Jewess, and he sent for Paul and heard him concerning the faith in Christ. And as he reasoned of righteousness, temperance, and judgment to come, Felix trembled and answered, "Go thy way for this time. When I have convenient season, I will call for thee." And he hoped also that money should have been given to him of Paul, that he might loose him. Therefore, he sent for him the oftener and communed with him. And so if you go read that Wikipedia page about Felix, one of the things you'll find out is the Felix was a conniver. He was open to bribery uh, in many cases. And so he was really kind of, I think he thought, well, I'll put Paul in prison, wait for somebody to come and bribe him, or, bribe me to get him out. And then I'll set him free when somebody pays me. But nobody ever did. And so 2 years passed. And Festus came into Felix's room, which means that Festus came to replace him as governor. And Felix, willing to show the Jew a pleasure, left Paul bound. And so he just left him there. And so now, next week we'll see Festus come into the picture, and Festus not wanting this to. I mean, Festus just kind of wants to come in with an open record, to get rid of all the stuff from Felix's, clear the slate, and start over, as his time and power, because he's got different things that he wants to accomplish while he's there. And so next week, we're going to see what happens when Festus comes in and Felix resigns. And so we'll move on from there. But um, so these links here are available if you want to check them out. This Felix, the Roman governor, which is just the Wikipedia page, but it's good information. And of course, the video Caesarea is just phenomenal. I really hope you'll go watch that. But that'll do it for me this week. Thanks for coming and joining us, and we will see you next time. God bless you.